I recently came across a comment that was referring to a quote about what was called the totalitarian tiptoe. I'll read the quote here in a moment, but the basic idea is that tyranny tends to increase gradually, bit by bit. Tyrants don't usually go for a huge advance in their control. They do it slowly because that's more likely to be accepted, right? There's less likely resistance when they go inch by inch. Another analogy is the boiling of the frog, the slow boil of a frog, where if you put the frog in the water and just slowly turn up the heat, the frog probably won't jump out because the increase in temperature is so gradual that the frog doesn't realize what's happening, and by the time the frog does, or if it ever does, it's too late. The frog's been boiled. So you've probably heard something along these lines before, but I want to give a couple of concrete real life examples to make it extra clear, because this is a real phenomenon and it is something to be extremely wary of. So first I'll go back to that quote. The quote is, "The best way to take control over a people and control them utterly is to take a little of their freedom at a time, to erode rights by 1,000 tiny and almost imperceptible reductions. In this way, the people will not see those rights and freedoms being removed until past the point at which these changes cannot be reversed." And on the point of the rights not coming back, right? That the new normal is oftentimes not reversed. It's like a ratcheting strap. The more you tighten it and it clicks on the ratchet, it holds there. It doesn't go back again. So the tighter the control goes, click by click, inch by inch, it just holds that level of tightness, that level of control, and then get to the point where it's extremely tight, right? You have no freedom of movement anymore, right? So a couple of examples that I think of often, just because as far as daily life goes, these have been two kind of common um, manifestations of it for me. And I know lots of other people too. And I'll start with the obvious, which is, of course, this past year of medical tyranny, where politicians are now acting as if they're our doctors, and then on top of that, a doctor that you can't say no to whatever treatment they prescribe, assuming that whatever that treatment is perfectly safe, perfectly good for you, perfectly necessary, and in no way a infringement of your right to control your body. In no way is it a claim of ownership of your body, right? I mean, this is just an insane level of totalitarian control that way too many people went along with. And why did they go along with it? Because they were broadcasting safety, 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 safety a million times a day, every day, for months and over a year. And because most people don't understand a key ethical truth, which is if you lose your basic freedoms, you're not safe. Because a lot of people have a hard time grasping that, probably because no one ever told them that, they never were taught that. They think that it's a fair trade. They think, well, if it's, keeping people safe, so they say, then losing freedom is okay. Right? Assuming that the people proclaiming greater safety are not mistaken and not deceptive, not doing it for their own selfish gain, not doing it for more power and wealth, for example. So that's an obvious example of just a proposed new normal that is a significant change from how life used to be. I never had the experience prior to 2020 of anyone telling me that I need to use a certain medical device. Never. I mean, it would have just been absurd. If I went into a store and the cashier told me, hey, you need to use this certain medical device as a preventative healthcare measure, I would have said, what are you talking about? You're not my doctor. And even if you were my doctor, I don't have to do even what my doctor tells me. So, who the hell do you think you are, basically? You're not my master. I'm not your slave. It's really that simple. But people are like, well, it's different because there's a health crisis, which is highly debatable how real the crisis really is. I mean, it's just sad. I hear people now saying like, oh, I felt kind of like I had a little bit of a cold. So they go get tested, and then these newfangled tests say, oh, it's not just your common cold. It's this, dangerous new virus, So even though you just feel like a minor cold, it's potentially much worse. And so now you got to take these pharmaceutical cocktails that we, mandate for you, and you got to quarantine, etc. They basically take over your life, become a, tyrant doctor that you have to obey because you had the sniffles and their test tells you it's whatever they tell you it is. It's absurd to give up our freedom like this, to be so naive and trusting of the least trustworthy people, like as if politicians and giant corporations and the pharmaceutical industry, like neither have a good track record at all. At all. It's just like they've repeatedly been found to be deceptive and unethical and have harmed millions of people. And yet these are the same people that you think you should just trust without question because they tell you it's for safety. It's like mandatory insurance. It's for safety, gotta have it. It's for the greater good. They're these warriors of virtue, but meanwhile they're just doing it to make a profit. So stores demanding that putting up signs saying masks required is insane. Should have never occurred, no matter how severe the crisis. And this is the other part that, again, I'll repeat because a lot of people don't seem to get it. They just think, well, if the crisis is big enough, what if there was really hospitals overflowing and people dropping dead in the streets? Wouldn't then the health mandates be acceptable? No, because you're assuming that the people putting forward the mandate, first of all, didn't create the crisis to begin with, and secondly, that they are proposing a solution that is actually the right solution and that isn't just for their own benefit or isn't actually dangerous. You're letting them usurp your own bodily autonomy and free will to make your own medical decisions. You're subjecting yourself to tyranny. You're reducing yourself to nothing but the livestock of politicians. I mean, if you don't think that's problematic, if you don't think that's a point worth even addressing, I don't know what to tell you. You're really suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Well, that's what I'm going to tell you. So that's one huge example. Another one is, I remember for, all pretty much up until last year too, whenever I'd go to mail a box, whether at a post office or any kind of shipping center, they would ask, or they would have a screen that you had to click yes or no. Do you have any hazardous, flammable materials, that kind of thing. And then you would say no or click no, and then that would be the end of it. But now what they do is they just ask you, what's in the box? What's in the box? Just, they want you to reveal everything that's in the box. It's not a question of, is it this hazardous thing that could possibly, you know, explode in the mail truck and hurt the mailman? No, it's just what's in the box, which is an infringement of your right to privacy, right? It's an aggressive act. It's unnecessary invasion. It's like, if it was a reasonable question, like, oh, perhaps you didn't realize that, like perfume bottles or this kind of thing actually could be dangerous for the postal employees. So we just want to make sure that's not in there. And then you say, oh, yeah, no problem. I don't have that in there. That's fine, right? That's not like an aggressive invasion of privacy. But now they're just saying what's in the box. And you're supposed to, what, give the details. Like, you're mailing something to your girlfriend, like maybe a Valentine's gift, and you gotta say what it is. It's just, this is the kind of thing where it seems insignificant. A lot of you might be like, oh, well, I don't really care, whatever, it's no big deal. So you think it's no big deal, but what it is it's accepting a further tiptoe toward enslavement, where you have no privacy. You have to reveal everything to the so-called authorities and, be their livestock once again. You should not have to just give full, disclosure of whatever you're mailing to your family or friends. That's ridiculous. Would you accept that of your neighbor? You'd be like, mind your own business. Like, right? You'd tell them off like, it's none of your business, right? So why do you think it's okay? Again, it's just the same pattern over and over. Idolatry leads to acceptance of abuse. You think, well, it's different when it's the post office because they're an authority and it's for safety. No, it's not different. If they're being overly invasive, it doesn't matter, because all there has to be is another crisis, right? Well, maybe someone did mail something dangerous and it got on the news, and then they use that to say, well, see, we gotta start, inspecting every box and asking everybody personal details just to be safe. And this is where they get people, because they don't have the, I guess, critical thing to discern between, fact and fiction here, and what's actually ethically sound and what's not. It doesn't matter what crisis is going on in the world or what bad thing some other person did. That doesn't then make it okay to do something bad to you, which is what an invasion of privacy is. Two wrongs don't make a right. Abuse is actually never justifiable. And this is just the main blunder over and over and over again. People think that abuse is justifiable when, most of the time, when an authority figure says it, and especially when that authority figure says it's for safety. Those are the magic combination. Then all of a sudden abuse is perfectly fine. And this is just the main blunder that these false authorities and abusive tyrants keep utilizing over and over and over again, because people dumbly don't get that just because they say it's for safety, and just because there's a crisis, real, exaggerated, or whatever level, that doesn't mean it's then okay to abuse people. And yes, controlling people's bodies, mandating medical devices and treatments is abusive. Again, would you be okay with your neighbor saying, oh, you heard the flu's going around? Well, I got this here cocktail I put together in my kitchen. It's it's proprietary. Can't really tell you what it is, but it's gonna for sure kick that flu's butt. So I'm gonna need you to inject this in your arm right now. You'd be like, no thanks. Like, you'd think that guy was crazy, right? Trying to push some chemical cocktail on you, and yet you think it's legit just because you got talking heads on the TV And advertisements, I just got one on my subscription list today. It was something like the vaccine trust. I don't know what the basic gist of it was. Like, they're trying to increase confidence. I think it was called like the Vaccine Confidence Project or some nonsense like that. Right? They want everyone to trust that whatever they're pushing is good, right? And if you do, okay, but or if your neighbor does propose some snake oil to you and you actually think it sounds good, well, go ahead and take it. The issue is the mandate, right? That's where the abuse comes in. Preventative health care mandates are abusive, period. Asking someone to reveal all contents of your something you're mailing to a friend or family member or whoever, that is an invasion of privacy. That is aggressive. That is abusive. Period. That's it. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. That doesn't change the fact that that's abusive. And abuse doesn't actually make a crisis better. You could think, well, it might prevent the spread of, it might actually help prevent the spread of the illness, or it might actually prevent some dangerous thing from being mailed somewhere. Yeah, so you're accepting real abuse for to possibly prevent hypothetical harm. This is the other blunder that goes hand in hand with thinking that if it's for safety, or if an authority, so-called authority figure, says it's okay, that it's legit. You're accepting real time, right now violence to supposedly, possibly prevent some other harm from occurring. That's preemptive attack. It's a totally bunk premise. Something they use repeatedly because people don't recognize it as bunk. Oh, you need to harm me because it might prevent harm. Oh, okay. Whatever you say. It's just so stupid. And I hope some of these points clicked for one or two people out there. Please see my previous talks that get into preemptive attack, medical mandates, and abuse and idolatry for more clarity on this. All right, thank you for listening.